WNST, Taos in Baltimore. This pennant race with some late-night hijinks and Manny Machado and, of course, Joe Flacco back out on the field. Our Luke Jones is at Oriole Park at Camden Yards all week, as well as on the backfields in Owings Mills as the Ravens prepare to go to Cincinnati, where they know the road well. This guy knows the road well down there. Many, many years now as the WLWT sports anchor. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Vogel_WLWT. One of our defending champions from the Queen City. We welcome George Vogel back onto the program. George, tell you what, man, this is a fascinating football game in a lot of ways. It's going to define the direction for both of these programs the rest of the year, and I think a lot of intrigue because neither one of these teams really knows what it has under the hood, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, the Bengals have no idea offensively how they're going to hold up front with a revamped offensive line. I say revamped. That sounds like, they set out to improve it, but you lost Andrew Whitworth, you lost Kevin Zeitler. So they lost their two best offensive linemen. They're using the two tackles they drafted a couple years ago to start at left tackle and right tackle, and Boyhe and Jake Fisher. Those guys have not exactly proven their worth just yet, but they're going to get their chance this year because they are now in the starting lineup. And we're going to have to see how they hold up because that is the major question mark with this Bengals team.
Well, they've built some nice pieces around, and obviously, keeping Dalton upright's important, and they've got these veteran running backs as well as Mixon, a kid that we could not have brought in here. They wind up drafting John Ross, and I think we're all familiar with what happens with first-round wide receivers. You guys had Peter Warrick out there, and we've been through a number of Travis Taylors, and we're waiting on the Brashad Perrymans, but, the skill position's all good. Then the question is, can they run the football as much as protect Andy Dalton? Because if they run the ball well, they won't need to throw the ball so well. And obviously, this is a huge challenge because the Ravens think no one can run on them.
Yeah, and the Ravens, their calling card once again is defense. And certainly the preseason, they look great on the defensive side of the ball. And the Bengals were very suspect on offense the first two times out of the box. But in that third preseason game against the Redskins, the first-team offense looked pretty darn good. And that's what gives the Bengals some hope that maybe they're rounding in the shape and that line is going to be able to hold up. Because you're right, the skill positions, they've got it. Even though John Ross is going to be out, he's got a sprained knee, but Tyler Eifert right now healthy. That helps. A.J. Green certainly is a piece anyone would like to have. Andy Dalton's got the experience. The running backs, Joe Mixon has looked marvelous in training camp coming in here as a rookie. May not be the starter, but could end up getting more snaps than anybody at running back, depending on, how comfortable they are with how he knows every facet of the playbook. But all indications are they're very pleased with where he's at with the mental aspect of the game. So they've got the weapons. It's just, as you said, keeping Andy Dalton upright and keeping him healthy because that line is so suspect right now. That is the most important thing. That's where all the focus is going into this game to see how they hold up against the Ravens because, we know the Ravens can cause a lot of havoc down there.
I was going to say, Terrell Suggs looks like a man half his age right now. I mean, I don't know what's gotten into him in the offseason and the workout, but I mean, even in the preseason games, he was like playing for real. I mean, it was something to see him with this kind of a chip on his shoulder at this point in his career.
Yeah, it almost feels like, he may have been thinking, everyone's looking past him and maybe he's getting phased out because he's getting up there in years. But, it's almost like the James Harrison thing where, and he came to Cincinnati and didn't quite fit what Cincinnati did. And everyone wrote him off. And then he goes back to Pittsburgh and had a pretty darn good year. So, some of these guys are so special and can do it year after year after year. And he's looking like one of those guys.
Tom Brady turned 40 a couple weeks ago. No one thinks he's too old.
No, that's true. They're saying he may have a better year this year than he had in 2007.
Oh, man, I hope not, right? I mean, for all of our sake at this point. George Vogel joining us here from Cincinnati, Ohio at WLWT. You can follow him out on Twitter at Vogel_WLWT. That's VOGEL as well. You know, we catch a break here this week, and I know it's a nice break to have because the Ravens don't feel like they've caught a lot of breaks with the injuries in the offseason, whether it was Pitta and Crockett Gilmore and Tavon Young and all the things that have gone wrong around here, including Flacco not being upright. But no Vontez Burfict, no Pac-Man Jones. That's a nice little reprieve for the Ravens, who played a couple of games last year with no A.J. Green on the Cincinnati side.
Yeah, and Burfict was having a terrific preseason. Looked very good in the games. Showed up to camp in terrific shape, maybe the best shape he showed up in. He had everything going his way. I mean, he was looking great, making impact-type plays, which is what he's all about. And then kaboom. He hits the guy in the Chiefs game. They review the video, and he's gone. And, you know, originally 5 games. I don't know. I feel like maybe I got a little homerism in me here because I felt like the 5 games was a little excessive, but they chopped that down to 3. I tell you, it all goes back to his past, his reputation. You know, there was the game against the Panthers a few years ago where he was twisting ankles of guys at the bottom of piles, and he got fined for that, which I was kind of surprised he didn't get suspended for that. You know, stepped on a Patriots player in one game, allegedly inadvertently, but he did get fined for that, and there were some other transgressions, and it's just all piled up on him, and now something like what happened in that Chiefs game results in a 3-game suspension, and the league's cracking down on that stuff, and he knows it. The Bengals know it. You just, you know, right now, if you don't have to make contact and knock a guy on his butt, then, you know, if he's running down the field and is in a defenseless position, you best leave him alone. I think that's a message the league sent there. And, you know, the Bengals have capable linebackers, but they don't have a playmaker like Vontez Burfict. And now, with Adam Jones out and maybe he hasn't been the best cornerback in the league the last couple of years because of age, but he's been very serviceable for the Bengals. And now they're going to get tested with that depth there with Will Jackson, the first-round pick who didn't get to play last year because of injury. And the Bengals have been raving about him in camp. But, you know, it's one thing looking good in practice. We'll see what happens when the live bullets fire. But there's going to be some young corners tested in this game.
George, you mentioned you know, Burfict and the suspension in the Chiefs game, and you know, Marvin came to his defense, and you know, Marvin's come to his defense a whole lot, including, you know, bringing him into the franchise in the beginning with the problems and the maturity issues, and then there was a Steelers game. You know, reputation really does go a long way, right? And I know Adam Jones has worked hard to not make it rain anymore and all the things that go along with him. You know, Marvin's brought Joe Mixon in. I mean, the place has become, and I remember the who they going to arrest next days. Yep. Marvin has really tried to you know, bring in troubled people and clean them up. And in the case of Burfict, it's still very much a work in progress. I mean, the bottom line is, as much as the kid has done to be in shape and to know the game and the passion that he brings to the game, he's not playing on Sunday. That can't be acceptable to anyone. And you can't say, well, you know, Roger was a little too hard on us or doesn't like the Bengals or whatever. You know, it's pretty obvious that once you get a reputation around the league offices up in Park Avenue, your number's going to get called. I mean, you know, all the guys who are repeat offenders have this issue, right?
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. And you know, Adam Jones did kind of have that issue with all the off-the-field stuff for a while, and you know, he seemed to have that under control and cleaned up for the most part, and then kaboom, this past off-season, he had the episode where, you know, he went off on the police officer as they're hauling him in and had trouble at the Justice Center when they had him there. And, you know, he's apologized and all that, and that's well and good, but you can't be doing those things when you're 32 years old and in the National Football League and representing $1 billion business. And I was kind of surprised it ended up a 1-game suspension for him because when you look at that video, it's just totally unacceptable. I mean, you can't have guys representing your team doing things like that. It's just not right. And I feel like the Bengals were there for a while. the pendulum had swung the other way, and they didn't have very many guys that get in that kind of trouble. It feels like it's swung back a little bit, and they're taking maybe a few too many risks, and it certainly has bitten them here in the last few months. And now you got 2 starting football players on your defense that aren't going to play in the season opener.
He is George Vogel. He is Vogel _ WLWT in Cincinnati, Ohio, where they're preparing for the beginning of the season. And George, maybe preparing for the end of Marvin Lewis's run there. You know of my deep affection for him over more than 2 decades of our relationship and 15 years there. I don't know that anybody really believed back in 2003 he'd still be there in 2017. And there have been many opportunities to throw him off the side of the boat. And even the Burfict thing a couple of years ago, the internet fired him several times. He has managed to survive there, but you've been there long enough that you remember the Bruce Coslets, you remember the Shulas, you remember the 2-14s and the 41-0 losses every time they went to Pittsburgh. And it's changed there. That job was not even palatable 15 years ago. The day Marvin does leave there, they're not going to have any problem hiring a real NFL head coach there.
Yeah, that dynamic change, it was known as Siberia before Marvin got here. I mean, it's where the only free agents who would come to Cincinnati were guys who were just looking for one final payday, one last year in the league to make some money. I mean, they didn't get any impact free agents. They drafted all over the board. They didn't have a system where they drafted players to fit a system. They just grabbed whoever they thought were good players. It was a complete mess before he got here. And now they have a system where you see guys, they draft guys that other teams may not draft that fit their system. And lo and behold, in a year or two, they raise these guys up to be nice players in the NFL and in the scheme that they run. And that's something the Bengals never did in the 90s or the early part of the 2000s until Marvin got here. But I get a sense, it's weird. I always felt like he had a job for life because he and Mike Brown have a really good relationship. They work well together. They work closely together. I get the feeling they can pretty much say anything to each other about the team and about their jobs and try to get it right. But this one feels a little different as he goes into this season without the extension. I just feel like not maybe so much that management is tired of Marvin or want to get rid of him, but it almost feels like both sides feel like, you know what, maybe I've been doing this a long period of time. Maybe it's time to move to a different role. I have nothing concrete to base that on. Nothing. It's just a feeling I get with the way this thing has gone down. But, I would love to think that Marvin would take some kind of GM type role or still be with the team upstairs and help them through any type of transition they may go through. It's going to be real interesting to see this one play out after the season. And again, it could still be the fact maybe it is Marvin's job till he wants it, but I just get a sense that there's a little different feeling there this year as he heads into the final year of this contract.
Well, a level of urgency as well. And, George, are you mainly optimistic or mainly pessimistic about this particular version of the Bengals this year?
I'm a little pessimistic. And, look, the schedule plays out fairly decent for them. Obviously they got their season opener at home. Then they have to play 4 days later, but at least that's at home. The schedule is not that. I think I saw their strength of schedule is somewhere around 25th in the league. I mean, it's
weird too. They have three in a row at home and 3 in a row on the road. It's really a weird schedule, right?
Oh, it's a total weird schedule. It's almost like the league. The Bengals had asked, they had been on the road for 5 straight years for the opener. And the Bengals had asked the league, hey, you think maybe, just maybe, we can open at home one of these years? So the league's like, yeah, here you go. And by the way, you got to play the following Thursday. But at least they did give them the home game for that Thursday as well. But
well,
it is strange. The setup of the schedule is very strange.
Busy week around there, right? I mean, it didn't occur to most Ravens fans that they have to go play 4 days later on Thursday against a pretty good Houston Texans team as well that obviously has some storm displacement issues and, just all sorts of stuff swirling here as the season begins. It is exciting around here. George, always great to have you on. Make sure you save me a little chili coney and all that stuff down there on the Sunday so I can get the indigestion that I'm so familiar with as I leave Cincinnati every year. So.
Yeah, you got to get used to that stuff, but once you do, it's very, very good.
I think it's the cinnamon in there that throws me all off, George. I think that's
You're
what
right.
does. Hey, man, great having you on, buddy.
Nestor, thanks, brother.
You got it. George Vogel out in Cincinnati, Ohio. He is Vogel_WLWT, longtime sports anchor out there in the Queen City. I'm headed to Cincinnati on Sunday. I'm also going to be taking in the Terps and Towson on Saturday at Bird Stadium. Luke's going to be running around with the Orioles all week long. And, of course, they're running off to Northern Ohio and Cleveland this weekend to face the torrid Tribe. Boy, the Indians look good right now, and, Houston's look decent. I know we had the Yankees in here earlier in the weekend. They looked okay when they were in Boston last weekend, and the Red Sox are cheating. All sorts of baseball stuff going on. I even mixed in a cap segment this week, so it does warm my heart this time of year, getting back after Labor Day, getting my mojo started. So kind of like when the kids go back to school, kind of feels like that for me on radio. So I appreciate all the kind words on my passing of my mom last month as well. But we have revved up the engines here at WNST, and we are ready for Terps, for Ravens, for Orioles playoff drive. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.